Okay, so for feeding your sourdough, you're gonna have your ware, your sourdough, some water, and your flour. So start, of course, by weighing how much sourdough is in your container. Since I've got mine in a cup, I'm gonna put the same cup on here, hit tare, so that way I'm not weighing the cup, and then put the one with the sourdough on there. So I've got about 150 grams. Now I'm gonna go ahead and tare again, and I'm gonna add 150 grams of water. This is warm water that's not like super hot. So not quite hot enough for tea. Now if it's a couple grams over, it's not a big deal. So now that I've got that, I'm also going to add 150 grams of flour. So I'm going to tare again, and then go ahead and put that in there. And if I went a little over on the water, I try to go a little over on the flour to keep the mix about right. And then from there, I'm just going to take a fork and stir that up a little bit, which I would love to do, but I can't seem to open my drawer with one hand. But anyway, so you stir that up a little bit. It doesn't have to be super mixed. It just has to be enough that it'll do its thing. Thank you, Derek. It's so nice to have a lovely assistant. Okay. So stir that up just enough that the flour's not super dry on top anymore. And then what you do with this is you can, this will get way bigger than that cup, so I'm going to have to transfer it into something larger. Normally I just have it in a jar like the one I left with you, but I'm washing the jar at the moment, so I figured I'd try a cup, but it's way too much, so I'm going to put it in a bigger bowl. But this is gonna, the yeast in the starter is going to eat the flour and water and get super big and expand and have all these bubbles inside of itself. And for this time, you can just leave it do that, so you can just feed it if you don't have time or need a loaf of bread that week. If you do need a loaf of bread, then after it's eaten the flour for a little bit, usually at least 3 hours or so to give it time to really get bigger. You can even do it for as much as 8 hours. But anyway, so once it gets big, then you use part of, this is your new starter now that you've fed it. So you can use part of that and use it to make your bread or whatever you're making, or you can just set it aside and use it for later, but at least you've kept it alive. Yay, Seymour. Bye, Beans. Hey, Beanie. We've got Derek behind the camera. He's being sexy cameraman. All right, so sourdough, people make a whole big deal about it because they get very dramatic about it, but it's actually not hard. It's like a couple ingredients, which is why I think it'd be good for you. And it takes a couple days to put together, but your actual involvement in it, it does most of the work. So the things you do only take a couple minutes at a time, and then it's done. And so anyway, and part of the couple days is it rests in the fridge for a couple days where you don't touch it at all. So it sounds very involved, but it's actually really, really, really easy when it comes to what you actually have to do. And you're a nurse, you've got this, I believe in you. All right, so we have normal flour. You've got salt of whatever kind. I happen to have pink salt, whatever you got's fine. I've got a little glass of hot water back there. We've got the starter. As you can see, it got really full after I fed it. So I'm going to use what I'm going to use out of this, and then I'm going to dump part of it out into the trash. I never actually dump it into the garbage because if I accidentally dump the whole thing, I'll be sad. So I kind of spoon some of it out. And then you've got your bowl and your weighing thing. All right, so I'm gonna hit power on those, which I should have done a second ago. We'll see. They're gonna connect because they're weird. All right, so we're gonna put the bowl on there and hit tear because of course we don't want to measure the bowl. And then I'll send you the instructions up here, but I'm just going off this guy. So we're gonna do 83 grams of starter. It is rather gooey and it smells funny, but don't worry, it's supposed to. If it doesn't smell funny, it's not going well. Okay, and again, with the grams are so tiny and we're not measuring for medication. So as long as you get darn close, you're fine. So I wanted about 83 grams of that. I'm gonna hit tear. I want 241 grams of warm water. Eventually. Okay, cool. That's good enough. Actually, that's exactly it. That never happens. All right. I usually kind of give that a twirl so it breaks up some of the starter. Not a big deal. Ah! All right, and then I want 8 grams, so tear again. 8 grams of salt. Oops. 9 grams of salt this time, turns out.
10.
Oh. All right, we're gonna tear again. And then I want 333 grams of flour. So that usually ends up being about 2 cups, so you don't have to, divot those in quite as slowly as we did the water or anything else. Just a little over. There we go. And I personally love doing things by weight because then I don't have to get out a whole bunch of measuring cups and all that. I just get to pour, which is nice. So then you give this a little bit of a mix. You're not going for anything too dramatic. You just want it to look kind of like a really, the term is shaggy dough, which always cracks me up because that's about what it looks like. It doesn't look like much right now. So there's that. Then you can cover it with whatever you want. I have a tendency to use a plate. And that's just so that it can hang out without drying out. And then I'm going to set a thing for about 30 minutes. And that's it for this step. And then I'll show you the next step in 30 minutes. All right, so it's been more than 20 minutes, more like an hour and a half, doesn't matter. So technically, you don't necessarily need too many of these steps, but it does help kind of make the texture a little better. But if life is crazy and you miss something, it's really not that big of a deal. So you want to get your hands a little bit wet, really wet actually. Here's your dough, so it still looks crappy. And basically, just kind of pull it together. And you're gonna try to stretch it. So the idea is that gluten forms strands the more you mess with it. So it's not a perfect thing. The reason you got your hands a little bit wet is otherwise it'll stick to you terribly. So anyway, so I stretch it out. You can also, if you have something that's got a good shape, to scrape all this stuff off the edges, you can, and get it to stick together. You can use a spoon or whatever you'd like. But for this version of things, they call them stretch and folds officially. If you talk to sourdough people, it's very dramatic. So anyway, but you just kind of stretch it and fold it back in on itself. And they recommend doing this version with this stage in it like 8-10 times or so, just to get it. And now you can see looks more like a put together ball of dough as opposed to the more shaggy version. And then we cover it back up and leave it be for another 20 minutes or so. Again, past this, you don't really have to do the next several versions of stretch and folds, but you can do this again every, wait 20 minutes, do it again, and then wait 20 more minutes and do it again, or you can skip all of those after this step. So totally up to you and how your day is going. Sometimes I skip it, sometimes I don't. Okay, here we are about 20 minutes later, probably actually about 30 because life. So I'm going to get my hands a little bit wet and stretch it, and you'll see the difference from last time. Okay, so first of all, as I pick it up, almost everything comes with it. So it's getting so I can stretch it out really long, which is kind of cool. I can stretch it both directions really nice and long, and I'm just going to do it about 4 times. And I want to stretch it to the point where it doesn't quite break, it just stretches. All right, back in, covered. And I'll do it again, like I said, in about 20 minutes, and we'll see you then. Welcome to your last set of stretch and folds. Yay! All right, so once again, hands a little bit wet. Pick up the thingy. It's being a little more sticky this time and sticking to the bowl, but it's still all coming up in one thing. It's all good. So I'm gonna stretch. Stretch. All right. Every time I say stretch and fold, I always think of that thing in Legally Blonde where they do bend and snap. All right, so you got a little ball again, back in there, and this is the longest thing we're gonna do yet. It's very dramatic. It's gonna sit for 2 hours. Yay. So leave it on your countertop, let it sit for a couple hours, and then from there we've got like 2 more steps, and then it goes in the fridge for a couple days and you don't have to worry about it till you bake it. All right, congratulations, you got to do something else for a couple hours while the sourdough starter did its thing. So one of the last steps you're going to do. So normally when you cook sourdough and people talk about it, you'll see this kind of round loaf thing that people will do. We're making something that's a little bit better for making sandwiches and that kind of stuff. So we're gonna do it in kind of a rectangular loaf pan instead of cooking it more freestyle on a hard plate. With all of this in mind, you don't necessarily need to do this next step either. If you're just putting it in a loaf pan, that will create the shape that you need, so you don't necessarily have to do this. That being said, this can help the kind of texture inside the bread. It can help it kind of form this cool layers of all these different kind of areas that can hold air pockets, and so it lets you form a better crumb structure. So you can do this or not. If you're gonna skip it, you can just put this in the loaf pan and put it in the fridge, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So go ahead and get your hands wet again, and you're gonna pick it up, and it's all kind of velvety and awesome and fantastic. So from there, you're gonna basically take it and roll it, and we're just gonna try to roll it into as tight of a roll as we can get. So once that's rolled, I'm going to take it and I'm going to roll it again the opposite direction, because basically I'm just trying to get it to have this nice tight structure inside, so that while it's in the fridge fermenting for up to 3 days, it has a lot of different areas to trap that and it comes out really good. So I just roll it kind of usually one way one direction, one way the other direction. If it feels like I got a nice tight roll, I stop then. I'm going to do this now, and in 20 minutes I'm going to do it one more time, and from there we'll put it in the fridge together. Thanks. You're finally here. It's the last time. So take that off. Get your hands a little wet. Gather this guy up together. And then just kind of roll it as tightly as you can. Go one way and then potentially the other. If the rolling thing isn't working for you, I have heard some other people talk about basically folding it as tightly as they can together. So whatever works best for you, this is just what I found that seems to work best for me. All right, so I make sure it feels like it's rolled up nice and tight. And then from there, congratulations, you have dough still. All right, and then I'm gonna put it in the silicone thingy. And after I get some of this off my hands, then this is where that shower cap comes into place. So you can put a shower cap over the top of it. I'm personally gonna put a little kind of oiled cloth thing over the top of it. You saw me buy one when we went to that fair. So I'm gonna put that over the top of it, and whatever you do, just make sure you're putting something over the top so it doesn't dry out. And then I'm gonna put this in the fridge for 1 to 3 days, at which point we get to bake it. See you then. I just wanted to do a progress report. It's been in the fridge for about a day, and this is what it looks like. So definitely gaining in size. Okay, time to bake. Yay! So I've left it in there for 2 days. So you can see it's getting all kinds of bubbly. There's even some like big bubbles, which is cracking me up. What you want to do is get out your Foodi, take everything out of it, and fill it with water until that number back there, I don't think you can see it, but just to 3. So it's really, really, really not a lot of water. But you're just going to want that much. And then before you get started, you're going to power it on. Do the sear or saute on high and hit start. And so you're going to want to have it searing for a couple minutes, just enough so that it's getting a good steam and starting to boil. I pre-started this, so it's got a little bit of a head start, so it should just kind of keep going. So meanwhile, we've got this guy out. You can do a couple different things. I'm going to kind of roll down this so that it has the opportunity to kind of mushroom up a little bit while it's baking. That's not necessary at all. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a razor blade and score it just a tad. This is also not super necessary, but it's kind of lets some of the air out on those bigger bubbles. So that's all good. The third thing I'm going to do that's not necessary is this is a good time to put a little bit of flavoring on top if you want to. So I'm going to add a little bit of smoked salt on the top. Not a crazy amount, just enough where it gives you kind of a fun crunch when you crunch into that part of the crust. All right, so while that's heating up, the other thing is I'm going to take the bottom of your like colander-y thing that came with it, and this bottom piece comes off. So I'm going to take that off and put it inside the bowl. And once again, I'm going to show you how much water is not in there. It is not even tall enough to go over the little things on the thing, so I can touch it without getting my hand wet in the middle there. All right, so with all of that done, and the water's steaming nicely, so you could see it. I think you could see it before. It's bubbling and everything. So with all that in mind and done, I'm going to take this guy and put it inside of the container. Be careful, it's hot. That's kind of the point. So Now that it's inside, I'm gonna stop it from bubbling, or from the water from boiling. Actually, the water's still boiling, but I'm gonna stop it from cooking at the moment. So I'm gonna hit power to turn it off. Then I'm gonna hit power to turn it back on. I'm gonna close the top and hit bake. I'm gonna turn up the temperature to 400. I'm gonna turn up the time to 30 minutes. And I'm gonna hit start. And at the end of this, we will see if 30 minutes was enough or too much. This is always an experiment. So hopefully 30 minutes will be perfect. If not, we'll find out together. So let's see, it's been 30 minutes and bread looks pretty done without being burned. Yay! Okay, so I am going to take it out of there, which is always a hot situation. You can try to grab it with a towel if you want. And then I'm going to turn it out of here. Ah, so hot. And put it back in, put it upside down. Put it back in there. And then I'm going to air fry it for just like 5 minutes so that the bottom isn't doughy, it's got more of a crust to it. Okay, Sabrina, we have bread. So turns out it took 8 minutes to get the bottom a little more crunchy instead of it being as doughy. You do want to let it cool off before you cut into it, because if you don't let it cool off, in theory it makes it a little chewier. But if you can't wait and you want to taste the wonderful warm bread, you can do that too. This is a bit of a flat loaf. I was surprised how flat it turned out. So I cooked it in, this guy is a 10-quart silicone pan. I do like using the silicone because they pop out pretty easily. So you can definitely do a smaller one. I do have a 6-quart one that it felt like this much dough was almost too much for it and it mushroomed out dramatically. So it's all kind of a little bit of figuring out what the best flow for you is. So you can either do a smaller than 10-quart, or you can also make a bigger loaf by adding more ingredients right at the beginning. So you can do maybe 1.5 of the ingredients of what we did. So do the amount we did plus another half, or yeah, whatever flows for you. Or if you like this size of bread, this should work. But anyway, meanwhile, it's got a wonderful crunch to it and came out nice. And I'm going to go enjoy my bread. Bye, Beans. Love you.